I had the house key in one hand, the crock pot in the other. The morning air in Cedar Falls was still cool, sharp with the smell of cut grass from somewhere down the street. The driveway had one unfamiliar sedan parked at the curb. Must have been someone helping Daniel and Megan move in. A pale gray two-story with a porch just wide enough for two chairs stood waiting. I'd bought it for Daniel, my son, and his growing family. A place to start fresh, not another cramped apartment with paper-thin walls. I climbed the 3 steps to the porch, balancing the crock pot against my hip, and saw them. 2 pairs of socks, stretched and dripping over the white rail, the kind you'd wear to bed, not for work. They weren't Daniel's. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the air still smelled of new carpet and the faint chemical sweetness of fresh paint. I set the crock pot on the kitchen counter chilly, slow cooking since last night's steam curling up, warm and homey. I imagined Megan and Daniel ladling it out later, maybe his arm around her, a "thanks, Dad," in that half-sheepish way he'd picked up since he was a teenager. From the hallway, I heard voices, not Daniel's deep rumble or Megan's quick tone. A woman, older, with that slow, lilting, Midwest drawl. "Just until we get the boxes sorted, Frank." I stepped into the living room. 2 suitcases were lined up against the wall. On the couch, a neatly folded quilt. By the stairs, a pair of work boots big enough for someone taller than my son. Megan appeared in the archway from the dining room, smile too quick to be comfortable. "Robert, you're here early." She wiped her hands on a dish towel, eyes flicking toward the hallway. "My folks came to help us settle in. Just for a few nights." "Sure," I said. My voice felt flat even to me. I glanced past her and caught sight of a man's arm carrying a lamp upstairs. "Frank," I guessed. In the kitchen, Megan moved the crock pot to make space for a row of mason jars full of bright green beans. "Mom's been canning all summer," she said. "We thought we'd stock the pantry." I nodded, opened the fridge for something to do. 2 gallons of milk, neither brand Daniel buys. A bag of bagels with a Minneapolis grocery tag. From the porch, someone called, "Jason, grab the cooler." I looked out the window. A young man, early 20s, wiry build, was hauling a blue Coleman from the trunk of a sedan I didn't recognize. I told myself it was nothing. New house, people in and out, helping. Still, I noticed the small things. A guest code printed on a scrap of paper taped beside the smart lock. My name wasn't on it. While Megan fussed with the jars, I glanced at the fridge door. A piece of lined notebook paper was stuck under a magnet shaped like a corncob. Across the top, in neat block letters, "Kitchen duty schedule." The names weren't Daniel's or Megan's. "Looks like you've got a system going," I said. "Oh, just while everyone's here," she replied quickly. Steam from the crock pot curled into my face. It smelled like cumin and tomatoes, and the years I thought family meant showing up with food and tools, not paperwork. I stepped back onto the porch for some air. Across the street, Linda Patterson from the HOA was dragging her trash bin to the curb. She waved, then looked past me into the house. Her wave slowed before she turned away. The socks on the rail dripped again, one fat drop after another, into a widening dark patch on the porch boards. I didn't stop by again that evening. Figured I'd give them space to settle, see my son the next day. The following morning, I came back with a box of tools and a bag of bagels from Mill Creek Bakery, the kind Daniel likes, the ones with the thick salt crust. The driveway was different now. 2 sedans I didn't recognize parked nose to nose, one of them half on the grass. I let myself in. Or tried to. The smart lock blinked red. I pulled out my phone, thinking maybe the battery in the keypad was dead. Megan's text came through before I could knock. "Use this instead." A 4-digit guest code. Inside, the air was warmer, the faint smell of laundry detergent drifting in from somewhere upstairs. The crock pot from yesterday sat rinsed in the drying rack, my chili gone. Megan didn't mention it, and I didn't ask who had eaten. On the counter was a neat row of coffee mugs, 6 of them each with a different tourist slogan. None from places Daniel had ever been. Carol Miller, Megan's mother, was at the kitchen table with a laptop open, wearing a sweatshirt that said, Lake Okoboji. She looked up, smiled like I'd just wandered into a store she worked at. "Morning, Robert. We've got the Wi-Fi up and running, new network name. Megan's got the password. I nodded, set the bagels on the counter. Appreciate you getting it set up. From the corner of my eye, I saw a sheet of printer paper taped to the fridge. Wi-Fi, Miller House. Below it, the password in Carol's rounded handwriting. In the living room, Frank Miller's voice called up the stairs about a loose hinge. A hammer tapped twice. Somewhere outside, a dog barked, not a neighbor's. I went to the front porch for my coffee. Across the street, Linda Patterson was out early again, walking her retriever. She slowed when she saw the extra cars, then caught my eye and gave a small, puzzled wave. When I came back in, Megan was sorting envelopes by the front door. She slid a few into a folder marked Utilities in big letters. I noticed the top one, the city water bill, had a new mailing address sticker over the old one. Just makes it easier if they come to me, she said quickly, catching my glance. The hallway smelled faintly of carpet cleaner. Jason's voice floated down from upstairs, talking to someone on speakerphone about job leads in Minneapolis. I could hear the clack of a suitcase latch snapping shut, or maybe opening. On my way out, I checked the guest code note by the door. Beneath it, in smaller print, another line in a different pen. Admin Carol. The lock clicked behind me, a little too fast. The bagels sat untouched on the counter. Saturday afternoon. The sky over Cedar Falls had that heavy, late summer look. A flat gray lid. The air close and damp. I came by with a small framed photo of Laura, Daniel's mother. It had been on my mantle for years, her smile catching the light from a fishing trip we took up in Minnesota. I thought it should be in his new living room, someplace where the family could see her. When I stepped inside, the house smelled faintly of onions and something frying in oil. The living room was fuller now, an extra armchair I didn't recognize. A throw blanket patterned with sunflowers draped across it. But what caught me was the wall over the couch. The framed print that had been there yesterday, a stock landscape that came with the staging, was gone. The nail was bare, and on the floor against the wall leaned my photograph of Laura, wrapped in a dish towel, the corner of the frame pressing through the fabric. Megan appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands. "We're just doing some work in here, Robert. Didn't want the dust to get on it," she said quickly. "We'll put it back." I nodded, but I didn't pick it up. From the kitchen doorway, I could see Carol bent over a pot on the stove, her voice low, talking to someone outside the back door. Laughter drifted in from that direction, Jason's voice, unmistakable now, bright and careless. The hallway to the garage had a faint chemical smell, not paint, but something sharper, like solvent. I followed it and opened the door. The garage light flickered on. 2 metal folding cots were set up along the back wall, each with neatly rolled bedding. An extension cord ran from a power strip to a space heater and a phone charger. A small pile of shoes sat under one cot. A laundry basket half full of clothes leaned against the wall. A dog barked once from somewhere behind the garage, the sound muffled by siding. On the inside of the garage door, taped next to the opener, was a list in Megan's handwriting. "Jason's things don't move." The ink had smudged in one corner, as if someone's hand brushed over it many times. I stepped back into the kitchen. Carol was ladling soup into bowls, 6 of them. She didn't ask if Daniel was home, and I didn't see him anywhere. "We've got plenty if you're hungry," she offered, cheerful as if we'd all planned this together. "No, thank you," I said. The smell of frying oil clung to my shirt as I crossed the living room. The wrapped photo leaned silently against the wall, the dish towel not slipping loose. No one had moved it since yesterday. On my way out, I noticed a scrap of mail on the console table by the door. It was a flyer from Cedar Falls Utilities, addressed to current resident. The forwarding sticker with Daniel's name had been peeled away. Outside, Linda Patterson was kneeling by her mailbox, tucking in a handful of letters. She glanced at the driveway, at the garage door closed tight in the humidity, and gave me a look I couldn't quite read. The air felt heavier when I got to my truck. Somewhere in the house behind me, Jason's laugh carried over the tap-tap of a hammer. By the time I pulled away from the curb, the sky had dropped a slow, sticky rain. It beaded on the windshield, and by the time I reached the end of the block, I'd already decided to circle back in the morning. Sunday was quieter. The rain had left the streets smelling of wet concrete and cut grass. I parked a little farther down, out of habit more than caution, and walked up the driveway with a manila envelope under my arm, property tax forms I'd printed for Daniel. The first thing I saw was a bright orange parking sticker on the windshield of the unfamiliar blue sedan. Cedar Falls Meadows HOA Resident Permit. The number read 226B. Daniel's house was in the 142nd, wrong section entirely. On the porch, the socks from earlier in the week were gone, replaced by a pair of men's sneakers, toes pointing toward the door as if waiting for someone to step back into them. The door opened before I knocked. Carol stood there with a broom in one hand. "Morning, Robert," she said, stepping aside like it was her house. In the hallway, a small stack of envelopes sat on the console table. On top, a Cedar Falls utilities bill with the name Megan Hayes, typed neatly in the responsible party field. Below that, a letter from HOA, pale green header, bold type, occupancy limits, and visitor parking. Megan came in from the kitchen, wiping her hands. "Oh, that's nothing," she said quickly, seeing my eyes on it. "Just a standard notice they send everyone." I picked it up without asking. The letter had today's date. Paragraph 2 was underlined. No more than 4 adults may reside in a single-unit property without prior board approval. I counted without meaning to Megan, her parents, Jason, and Daniel. 5. Somewhere outside, Linda's retriever barked. Through the front window, I saw her walking up the street in a yellow rain jacket, her eyes flicking from the extra cars to the front porch. She didn't wave this time. I set the letter back on the pile. The tax forms in my hand suddenly felt heavier. Carol was already sweeping toward the kitchen, humming. Megan slid the envelopes into a folder marked household in thick black marker. "Daniel around?" I asked. She smiled without looking up. He had to run into town. From the garage came the muffled buzz of a cordless drill, followed by Jason's voice. "Hand me the level." The sound of wood sliding against concrete. He wasn't fixing anything. He was building something. I stepped back onto the porch. The rain smell was still in the air, mixed now with the faint tang of engine oil. The orange parking sticker caught the light as I walked past the blue sedan. Resident permit. Wrong section, wrong house. By the time I reached my truck, I'd decided the HOA letter wasn't going to sit in their folder for long. By Monday morning, the air over Cedar Falls had cooled, that kind of crisp start that makes the cornfields smell faintly sweet. I took the interstate south before the sun was high, the manila envelope from yesterday riding shotgun. Des Moines was an hour and a half of flat highway and grain silos. I'd called ahead Thomas Beckett, attorney at law, downtown office in a sandstone building with a bronze plaque by the door. We'd met once before, years back, when I needed to update my will after Laura passed. He remembered me. "Robert," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "What can I help you with?" I laid the property deed on his desk, the original bill of sale, and the current insurance policy. "I bought a house for my son," I told him. "It's in my name. I want to make sure it stays for him and for his kid, no matter what else happens. And I want to control who lives there." He leafed through the papers. "Sounds like you're talking about a living trust. With you as trustee." "That's right. Beneficiaries. My son Daniel Hayes and any children he has. Occupancy clause. No third parties without my written consent." He nodded, already pulling a template from his computer. The sound of the printer starting up filled the small office, mixing with the faint scent of old coffee. "And one more thing," I added. "A separate agreement between me and Daniel house use terms. Guests for no more than 3 nights. No sublets. No modifications without approval." Thomas looked up. "You expecting trouble?" "I'm already in it," I said. We spent an hour going over language. Every page got a sticky flag for signature. The occupancy clause was simple, almost plain. Any adult not listed as a beneficiary or minor child of a beneficiary is considered a third party. I liked the sound of it cold and exact. By the time we finished, There was a neat stack of documents in a blue folder. My name at the top of every one. Daniel's name. Not Megan's. Not the Miller's. I thought briefly about when I'd show these to him and decided it wouldn't be today. Sometimes the best move is the one nobody sees coming. Outside, the wind had picked up, rattling the flag on the corner. I drove back toward Cedar Falls, with the folder seat-belted beside me. At the gas station off Highway 20, I picked up a fresh pad of yellow legal paper. From here on, every date and detail was going in ink. When I got home, the driveway was full again. 2 sedans, a pickup I hadn't seen before. From inside the house came Jason's laugh, the clink of silverware. I didn't go in. I sat in my truck and opened the blue folder just enough to see the top page, Declaration of Trust. My name under trustee. I closed it gently, thinking about the HOA letter still fresh in my memory. That one, I might use soon but not yet. The folder made a soft sound when I shut it, like something locking into place. Tuesday morning, the air was damp again, a low mist hanging over Cedar Falls. I parked 2 houses down, the blue folder on the passenger seat, yellow legal pad on top. The first entry from yesterday stared back at me in my handwriting. Trust filed 9:42 a.m. I didn't plan to knock on their door today. Sometimes the easiest way to change a house is to do it without anyone inside knowing. I drove to Cedar Valley Bank and Trust. The lobby smelled faintly of floor polish, and the air conditioning hummed low. At the customer service desk, I slid my driver's license and the property deed across to a young woman named Tara. I need to update the billing contacts for utilities and insurance tied to this property, I said. Are you the owner? She asked, glancing at the deed. Yes, I said. Sole owner. She tapped at her keyboard. We can list all accounts under your name only. Do you want to remove any authorized users? All of them. By the time I left, the city water account, the electric service, and the homeowner's insurance all bore my name exclusively. Megan's, Daniel's, and anyone else's were gone. Any future bill would come to me first. From there, I stopped at the post office, the small one on Main Street where the counters are worn smooth. I filled out a change of address form for the property, forwarding all mail to my own P.O. box. The pen felt heavy in my hand as I wrote each letter of my name. I thought briefly about the HOA letter from last week. If they ever needed proof of who controlled that address, it would be sitting in my mailbox, not theirs. Driving past the house on the way home, I slowed just enough to see the garage door open. Jason was inside, assembling what looked like a weight bench, a small radio playing classic rock. Beside him, a plastic bin was open folded clothes, a pair of boots, a shaving kit, not weekend luggage, things you set down when you're not planning to leave. The pickup from yesterday sat in the driveway with its tailgate down, a box fan balanced on top of a pile of blankets. Linda Patterson was out front with her dog again. She gave me a longer look this time, one that lingered on the truck, then on me. Back in my kitchen, I brewed a pot of coffee and set the blue folder on the table. On the yellow pad, I wrote, utilities mine, insurance mine, mail mine. I sat for a while, listening to the coffee maker hiss and click. Outside, a neighbor's kid rode past on a bike, laughing at something I couldn't hear. The folder stayed closed, but the legal pad felt warmer under my palm. Somewhere in Cedar Falls, a water bill was printing with only my name on it. By Thursday, the mist had burned off, and the air felt sharper, the kind of early autumn day when the cornfields look almost gold. I was in the driveway changing the wiper blades on my truck, when I saw Megan walking toward me from the corner. She had an envelope in her hand, creased and a little damp. Robert, she started, smiling a little too tightly. Did the electric bill get sent to you by mistake? And maybe the water too? We haven't seen either this week. I wiped my hands on a rag and looked at the envelope. It was addressed to my P.O. box, my name in bold above Cedar Falls Utilities. No mistake, I said. Her smile twitched. It's just, we usually take care of that, Daniel said. She stopped, glancing back toward the house. Jason's voice carried faintly from the open garage. the metallic clink of weights on a bar. I didn't answer right away. The rag in my hand smelled faintly of oil. I thought it made sense for the owner to handle the accounts, I said finally. She shifted the envelope from one hand to the other. Well, just let me know if you need us to pay you back. I nodded, but she didn't seem reassured. She walked back up the street, the envelope swinging lightly at her side. From where I stood, I could see the garage more clearly. The weight bench now fully assembled, a small mini-fridge plugged into the wall beside it. A folding chair sat next to it, with a half-empty can of soda on the seat. Linda Patterson was at her mailbox again, sorting letters. She watched Megan pass, then looked over at me, her eyes narrowing slightly before she closed the metal flap. Later that afternoon, I drove to the post office. 2 new envelopes waited in my box: insurance renewal, water service statement, both with my name alone. The woman behind the counter handed them over with a polite smile, no questions asked. Back home, I set them on the kitchen counter beside the blue folder. The coffee pot was still warm from the morning, and the house smelled faintly of it. I wrote 2 more lines on the yellow pad. First question from Megan, no reaction from Daniel. I wondered if he really didn't know, or if pretending not to know was easier for him. Through the kitchen window, I could see the sun dropping behind the trees, the light catching on the truck in their driveway. The mini-fridge cord was visible even from here, snaking across the garage floor. I closed the blinds. Saturday morning, the air had that brittle chill that comes right before the leaves turn. I was sweeping the porch when the mail truck stopped in front of my house instead of Daniel's. The driver handed me a thin white envelope from Cedar Falls Utilities. Inside, on their standard blue and white letterhead, was a confirmation of change request form. The first line read, "We have received your request to add an additional authorized account holder. The requested name, Megan Hayes." I stood there a moment, the broom still in my hand, listening to the faint hiss of tires on damp pavement. At the bottom of the page, the form noted, "Request submitted online. Pending owner approval." That afternoon, I drove to the utility office on River Street. The lobby smelled faintly of dust and copy paper. A woman at the counter looked up when I set the letter down. "That's my account," I said. "The request isn't approved." She tapped a few keys, then looked at me over the rim of her glasses. "All right, sir. I've marked it. Owner declined. No one can add themselves without your written signature now." She hesitated, then added, "We see this sometimes when family moves in, gets complicated." "Not complicated," I said, "just unnecessary." Back in Cedar Falls, I slowed as I passed Daniel's house. The garage door was down, but through the side window I could see Jason's weight bench in the same spot. A new shelf was mounted on the wall above it, lined with cans of soup and a box of instant coffee. Linda Patterson was out walking her dog, bundled in a sweater now. She glanced at the house, then at me. This time her nod was deliberate, almost conspiratorial, the kind of look people share when they've both noticed the same thing. At home, I set the declined form in the blue folder, sliding it behind the trust papers. On the yellow pad, I wrote, "Megan tried to add herself to utilities. Declined in person." The house was quiet except for the ticking of the wall clock. Somewhere down the block, a lawnmower started up, the sound faint and steady. I thought about the HOA letter again, and how adding names to bills could look a lot like changing occupancy. Not yet, I told myself. Not yet. Monday morning came with a pale sun and the sound of garbage trucks clattering down Cedar Lane. I was at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee when the mail slot clinked. A single white envelope slid onto the rug: Iowa Department of Transportation. The return address caught my eye first, then the name printed just below it, Jason Miller. And the address underneath? Daniel's house. I tore the envelope along the top. Inside was a vehicle registration renewal, complete with plate number and make. 2016, Ford F-150, blue. I could picture it immediately, the pickup with the tailgate down, parked in their driveway since last week. There was no mistaking it now. Jason hadn't just moved himself in. He'd moved his truck in on paper. For HOA, this was gold. Nothing says permanent resident like a state registration tied to the address. I set the registration beside my coffee and stared at it for a long time. The smell of roasted beans mixed with the faint scent of damp paper. Mid-morning, I drove to the county clerk's office. The lobby was small, fluorescent lit, the air a little stale. A clerk in a red cardigan took the paper from me. "I'm the property owner," I said. "This vehicle isn't registered to anyone on the deed. I'd like a note on file that this address is occupied by unauthorized residents." She raised an eyebrow but typed something into her computer. "Noted," she said. Then, almost conversationally, "We've had similar reports from this neighborhood before. Usually ends up at the HOA's desk, sooner or later." Back in the truck, I jotted a line on the yellow pad. "Jason registered truck at house documented." Driving past their place, I saw the F-150 still in the driveway. A new lawn chair sat beside it, angled toward the street like someone's favorite perch. Linda was walking past at that moment, the leash loose in her hand. Her eyes flicked from the truck to the front windows, then met mine. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. At home, I slid the registration into the blue folder, just behind the declined utility form. The stack was getting thicker. Outside, a wind had picked up, rattling the maple leaves in the yard. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked twice, and then stopped. Not yet, I thought again. But closer. By Wednesday, the wind had shifted colder, carrying that dry leaf smell that comes just before frost. I was sitting at the kitchen table, the blue folder open in front of me, when I noticed the HOA handbook tucked behind an old property tax receipt. It had been years since I'd read it cover to cover. The binding was creased, a coffee ring marking the front. I flipped through slowly, page after page of rules in small print, until I found Section 4, Occupancy and Residency Requirements. One line caught me. "No property shall be occupied by more than one family unit, defined as related by blood, marriage, or adoption, without prior board approval." Jason wasn't related to me by blood, marriage, or adoption, and certainly not to Daniel in any legal sense. His mother might have been, but she wasn't the one living there. After lunch, I walked down Cedar Lane to the HOA office, a converted room at the back of the community center, the carpet thin and the air smelling faintly of lemon cleaner. A woman named Claire sat behind a desk with a stack of manila folders. "Afternoon," I said. "I had a question about Section 4 the handbook." She reached for her copy, flipping to the page. "What about it? If I suspect there are occupants not fitting the family definition, do I have to file a formal complaint, or can I just ask for a review?" Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Either works. A request for review means the board will send a letter asking for clarification of residency. It's less formal." I nodded, as if I were asking out of curiosity alone. "Appreciate it." On the way out, the sound of children playing basketball in the gym echoed through the hallway. Their laughter seemed louder than the ball hitting the floor. Back home, I placed the HOA handbook on top of the blue folder and wrote on the yellow pad, "Section 4 Family Unit Rule. Claire review possible without complaint." Through the blinds, I could see Jason's F-150 parked in the same spot, the lawn chair now folded up and leaning against the garage wall. A new cardboard box sat beside it, marked Kitchen Fragile. I poured the last of the coffee into my cup, the smell sharp and familiar. The handbook stayed where it was, its pages just slightly curled at the edges. Not today, but soon. Friday morning, the sky was a flat gray, the kind that makes the air feel heavier. I'd left the blue folder open on the table overnight, the HOA handbook still on top. The page with Section 4 lay face up, a faint crease running through the middle. I poured coffee, sat down, and stared at it, until the steam from the mug thinned and disappeared. By late morning, I was back at the HOA office. Claire was there again, sorting through a stack of forms. She looked up as the door clicked shut behind me. "I'd like to submit that review request we talked about," I said. Her hands stilled on the papers. "For your property?" "Yes. 112 Cedar Lane." She pulled out a short form name, address, nature of concern. I filled it out slowly, my handwriting careful and even. Under concern, I wrote, possible occupants not meeting family unit definition, under Section 4. Claire read it over, then initialed the corner. The board meets Monday. If they approve the review, a letter will go out within the week. Standard mail. Will it say who requested it? She shook her head. Number. Just that an occupancy review has been initiated. On my way home, I took the long route, past the edge of town where the soybean fields stretched out in flat rows. The wind carried the faint smell of earth, and something sweet, maybe silage. When I finally turned onto Cedar Lane, the F-150 was gone. But the garage door was open, and inside, Jason was hunched over the mini-fridge, rearranging cans. A woman I didn't recognize stood beside him, holding a grocery bag. Linda Patterson was raking leaves across the street. She paused, leaning on the rake handle as her eyes moved from the garage to me. No nod this time. Just watching. At home, I slid the carbon copy of the review request into the blue folder, behind the HOA handbook. On the yellow pad, I wrote, review request filed 10:42 a.m. Anonymous. Outside, a few dry leaves skittered across the driveway. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a hammer tapped steadily, 3 beats at a time. Monday wasn't far. By Saturday, the cold had settled in for real. The grass crunched faintly under my shoes as I walked to the mailbox. The air smelled faintly of wood smoke from somewhere down the street. From my driveway, I saw movement at Daniel's house. The garage door was up again, but this time Jason wasn't lifting weights. He was stacking boxes, the same ones I'd seen labeled kitchen fragile and linens. Megan was beside him, folding down the tops and taping them shut. They spoke in low tones, but the sound of the tape gun carried across the street long, tearing pulls. Every so often, Megan would glance toward the street before going back to the box in front of her. I stood with my mail in hand, pretending to sort through envelopes. One was a grocery flyer, another a heating company coupon. The last was from Cedar Falls Utilities, my copy of the latest statement. My name printed alone at the top. Jason carried one box into the house and came back with a plastic tub, the kind you use for moving. It looked lighter than it should have been. He tossed it into the bed of the F-150 without bothering to close the lid. Linda Patterson walked by with her dog, slowing just enough to look at the open garage. Looks like spring cleaning came early, she said, her voice dry. Could be, I said, slipping the utility bill into my jacket pocket. Back in my kitchen, I laid the bill on the table, on top of the HOA handbook. The blue folder sat just to the side, its edges neat and squared. On the yellow pad, I wrote, Megan and Jason packing boxes observed. Bill received name only. Through the blinds, I could still see them in the driveway, Jason lifting another box into the truck. Megan stood off to the side, arms crossed tight against the cold, watching the house instead of him. The truck bed was half full by the time the sun dipped low enough to throw long shadows across Cedar Lane. By Tuesday, the truck was gone from the driveway for most of the day. The air was brittle cold, the kind that makes your breath hang. I'd just come back from the hardware store when I spotted Megan stepping out of the house, a folder clutched under her arm. Jason followed, wearing a jacket zipped up to his chin. They didn't see me. I was across the street, setting down a bag of salt for the walkway. Megan locked the front door and they both headed for the F-150, which was parked at the curb this time. Jason opened the driver's door, but she walked around to the passenger side, still holding the folder tight. The logo on the folder was just visible as the sunlight hit it, Cedar Valley Bank and Trust. I stayed where I was, watching them pull away toward the main road. The cold carried the faint smell of exhaust long after they'd turned the corner. 2 hours later, the F-150 was back. They didn't bring any boxes inside this time. Instead, Megan got out with a different envelope in her hand, long and narrow, the kind banks use for documents. Jason lingered in the truck, engine idling. She went inside without looking around. The blinds in the front window shifted a little, like someone checking the street. From my kitchen, I could see Linda crossing to her mailbox, her coat collar pulled up. She stopped halfway, looking toward Daniel's house, then glanced at mine. She didn't wave, just held my gaze for a moment before turning back. I sat down at the table, the blue folder open, and wrote on the yellow pad. Megan and Jason seen leaving with bank folder, returning with document envelope. Possible financial action. Outside, the light was fading fast, the street lamps humming to life one by one. In their driveway, the F-150 stayed idling for a while before Jason finally turned it off. They were moving pieces on their side of the board now. By Friday, the frost stayed on the grass until noon. The sky was a pale, washed-out blue, and the street was quiet except for the hum of a distant leaf blower. I set the blue folder on the passenger seat of my truck. It was heavier now, utility bills with my name alone, the declined name change request, the vehicle registration with Jason's address, photos of boxes in the garage, my carbon copy of the HOA review request. The HOA handbook sat on top, open to section 4, the page smoothed flat. At 9:30, I parked in front of the HOA office. Claire was inside, a mug of tea steaming on her desk. "Morning," I said, setting the folder in front of her. She opened it, flipping through slowly. I didn't say much. I didn't need to. The documents spoke for themselves. When she reached the registration form, she looked up. "This is thorough. Just making sure the board has everything it needs," I said. She slid the folder toward her side of the desk. "We'll review this Monday. If the occupancy is non-compliant, a notice to vacate will be issued. That's 30 days. I nodded once and stood. The air outside felt sharper than when I'd gone in. Driving back, I passed Daniel's house. The F-150 was in the driveway, tailgate down, a single box in the bed. Megan was standing in the garage doorway, arms folded. Jason was nowhere in sight. She watched me drive by, her expression unreadable. Linda was on her porch, mug in hand. As I passed, she gave a small nod, the kind people give when something they've been waiting for is finally in motion. At home, I set my keys on the counter. The kitchen was warm, the smell of coffee still lingering from earlier. I didn't open the yellow pad this time. Out the window, the wind picked up, scattering the last of the leaves down Cedar Lane. Thank you for watching Final Truth. Your support means the world to us. If this story kept you hooked until the end, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Every day we bring you new tales of family secrets, hidden motives, and twists you won't see coming. Turn on notifications so you never miss the moment the truth comes out. And remember, here at Final Truth, every ending is just the start of another story.